Star Wars collectors, and welcome to another Bossk Bounty video. Welcome to episode 63 of our Bossk Bounty. Of course, this is the weekly series where you guys ask me questions in the comment section below, and each week I try and do my best to answer them for you. We do have loads of questions again this week, so I'm going to do my very best to get through as many as I possibly can. And of course, if you do enjoy this video, don't forget to drop a like down below. It really does help the video and the channel. And I did just want to address the issues that my friends in the USA have been having with acquiring VC-177 Din Djarin and the Incinerator Trooper. I have seen it on social media. You guys have been having absolute nightmares trying to get that figure, but I do believe you're starting to see that figure now, which is awesome, although Walmart seem to be delivering it in all sorts of different conditions. So I just hope that you guys are able to get it in some sort of decent condition and obviously get it at all if possible. So, you know, my thoughts go out to you guys on trying to acquire that for your collections. Absolute nightmare. But, you know, I just did want to bring it up because obviously Walmart have been pretty scandalous in this situation, and I'm sure we will talk about it more on the Vintage Collection Show live stream this Saturday. And with all that being said, let's get on to the first question. So, question from GA. Question for next week. Do you go back to older Q&A videos to get questions, or are they always just from the preceding video? So basically, I just look at last week's episode. That's where you should leave your comments for the following week. I would find it very difficult to go back to previous videos and what have you. So if you do have a question for next week's episode and you leave it in the comments and it doesn't get answered, make sure you repeat that question or think of another question for the following week. I try and pick sort of topical questions, maybe in things that are coming out or what's happening in TV shows at the time, like The Mandalorian and things like that. As I say, I don't ignore questions on purpose. It's just there is a lot of questions to get through. But please do persevere with your questions and I will get round to them, I promise. Marco Martinez says, hello Bossk Bounty, Marco from the Bronx, New York, USA. Question, what line of figures from The Mandalorian will Hasbro be doing next for the Vintage Collection? Well, as you've probably seen by the thumbnail, we do have Kuill and IG-11 on there. So Jason from Yakface has pretty much all but confirmed those on his website. He has this list of upcoming Vintage Collection figures, and those two are down as rumours, but they did promise us that we would get all of the figures that interacted with the Razor Crest, and IG-11 and Kuill sat in the Razor Crest at some point, so they're going to be inevitable ones from Season 1, and yeah, they are rumoured for this year. Other than that, we don't really know too much else, but I'm sure you can expect plenty of figures throughout this year and next year from the Season 1 and Season 2 of The Mandalorian, purely on the basis that it's a bit of a hot property, and if they want to make money, they need to make figures from The Mandalorian. Outcast Studios says, hi Bossk, first of all, I'm a huge fan of your channel and the Vintage Collection. Question for next week's video, when do you think the next wave of Vintage Collection will come out, and what is your least favourite Vintage Collection ship? So the next wave of Vintage Collection is actually starting to hit Walmart now, I've seen online. So that is the repack wave with Peasant Anakin and things like that. That's starting to hit stores, and I do believe that we in the UK are going to be getting that anytime this month. In terms of the next wave, which is the one that's got the new Boba Fett and the Bespin layer, I believe, I think that'll be probably around March, April that we'll see those dropping. Maybe a bit earlier if we're lucky. In terms of my worst Vintage Collection ship, I'd probably have to go with the V19 Torrent Starfighter. It's just not really for me. I prefer the ones from the original trilogy. Andrew Al-Jujali says, question for next week. Do you think Hasbro will ever release a Purge Trooper with an Electro Staff and Blaster Rifle in the Vintage Collection? I know they released it in the Black Series through GameStop. 3.75-inch scale Airborne Troopers are high in demand on the secondary market. I think a redesign would be nice to see if it came out along with Cal Kestis in the same wave. Love to hear what you think on the matter. So I think Yakface, or Jason from Yakface, rumoured on his Instagram that Gaming Greats could be coming to the Vintage Collection. So yep, you're right, that's the GameStop exclusives, and that would be awesome because that would open it up to all sorts of things. We could get things from older games and the newer games that are coming out, and it could be in like a separate line, and it may not even affect the actual waves that Hasbro put out because they will be GameStop exclusives. So I'm all for that. And I think if they did do a Gaming Greats line, then I think you could probably expect a Purge Trooper, no doubt. Walter Abraham says, question for next week. Do you think Hasbro is going to release an updated version of the Vintage Collection Revan at some point? My Bastilla Shan figure is getting lonely. So I get this question quite a lot about Revan. Obviously, we had that one that was cancelled. And the rumour is that I've heard that, yeah, they will be bringing out a new Revan possibly this year. And going back to the previous question, if we're going to be getting a Gaming Greats line, then that is the sort of thing that will open up the license for Hasbro to be able to do that. You know, putting Revan in a normal wave, that takes up a slot for other figures. So if they were to do a Gaming Greats line with GameStop as an exclusive that doesn't affect the normal line, then they can get as many of those out as we like. Bill Polk says, I have a question. What vintage playset you had do you wish you still had? For me, it's the Creature Cantina playset, or maybe the Hoth set with the collapsible ice bridge. So with my vintage Star Wars figures back in the day when I was little, I didn't really have too many of the playsets. In fact, I think I only had the Palatoy Cantina. I had lots of vehicles and figures, but the playsets was something that eluded me. I don't know why. So for that answer, it has to be the Palatoy Cantina, because it was the only one I had. And to be honest, I think if I was to pick any of them now, would I want to buy a playset? It would probably still be the Cantina. Wayne Russell says, question for next week, Tim, do you think we'll ever get a Patrol Dewback and Sandtrooper in the vintage collection? As the Power of the Force 2 version is okay, but I'm not too fussed on the box. It seems a bit plain to me. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Wayne. I think if they did bring out a Patrol Dewback, it should be in a box very similar to the vintage one that I have here. And the toy itself could be, you know, more like something like this. I would want it to be more articulated. You know, something on the basis of the one that they did for the Black Series would be really, really good. Now, the thing that makes me think that we could see it more likely now is because of the Mandalorian. I think I've got the Mandalorian on there. He looks pretty cool. And I think because Dewbacks have been in the Mandalorian, as I say, we've got more chance of getting one. But I would like it to be in a Star Wars box, I must admit. But that's not to say that Hasbro couldn't do that. They could bring it out on a Star Wars box. Give us a new Sandtrooper or something, and then obviously, you know, the Mandalorian, it fits, doesn't it? You could put the Mandalorian on it if you wanted to. Kremster Create says, ask Boss Bounty, if you had an infinite amount of money and could purchase one Star Wars collectible, what would it be? I would buy a painted rocket-firing Boba Fett prototype. That is a very good choice and very, very expensive. I think I'm going to be a little bit different with this. I think if I had an infinite amount of money, which I don't, by the way, I would try and get myself a carded PBP or POC Bossk, and I will throw an image up on the screen of what one of those looks like. I'm into the foreign cards, and obviously I love Bossk, and apparently there's only maybe one or two of these in the world that exist, or at least anyone knows about. It's the Toxic Limbs Bossk, which loose will set you back, I don't know, £3,000 maybe. So to have that one on card on one of those POC cards from Spain, a lot of money. And that's probably the first thing that I would hunt down if I had an infinite amount of money. Two questions here about just getting into the vintage collection. So Blue Harvest Vintage Toys, which is Darth Mark, the illustrious leader of the Palaboys live stream. He says, hey Tim, if someone was to start collecting the vintage collection, which figures would you suggest they start with? Just get the ones coming out or go back to the beginning. Cheers. And the Kazman5 says, another great video, thanks Bossk. What characters figures would you consider key for a new collection? I recently started the vintage collection after watching The Mandalorian and would be interested in your opinion. So I think it all does come down to your tastes essentially, but what I would say is I would probably start with the ones that are already out, because you get those before they go up in value on the secondary market, before they sell out in stores. Get those first, and then you can go back to the original vintage collection from 2010 to 2012 and pick out some of the ones that are your favourites. Maybe you want to stick to the OT and just pick up those, or maybe you like the Clone Wars. It's entirely up to you. What I would say for Kazman is that there are some figures which really do stick out for me in the vintage collection. Things like Commander Cody, Slave Leia, the Dagobah Luke landing is another one. I'm naming some that are all a bit pricey, and that's not the reason why I'm picking those. I'm picking those purely because I think they're great figures and great card backs. But yeah, start with the ones that you can get cheaply now and then work your way back. Spacehead Studio says, great job on your content as always. Here's my question for next week. Which character in Star Wars would you most represent for your characteristics and personality? That's a tough question. I'll probably have to go with Chewbacca. He's hairy and he's always thinking with his stomach. Mr. Applesauce72 says, new viewer, TVC collector here with a question for next week. Has Hasbro ever given fans or collectors the chance to vote for the next figure in an upcoming wave? And if not, would you like to see this happen in the near future? So I think in the vintage collection, the last time that happened was the Dr. Aphra figure. Of course, they've done it recently in the Black Series with Commander Cody for the repack line, or whatever, the archive line, that's what they call it. I do think it's a nice way to get the fans involved, but I also do know that a lot of people think that these things are often fixed. So I think, particularly with the Black Series one, a lot of people thought it should have been the Slave Leia, and that somehow it is fixed not to be her. I personally voted for Cody on that one. Great figure, so who knows? But yeah, it's a good way to get the fans involved, and I think, yeah, it'd be nice to do it in the future. Toa of Atome, I think that's how you say that. Who's your favourite Star Wars vintage Kenner droid? Man, that's a tough one. I like them all for different reasons. Obviously, I've got a selection of them here. These aren't all of the ones I own. You know, it's hard not to pick R2-D2, isn't it? Because he's just such a classic. And looks very much like he does in the films. So, you know, they did really well creating that figure. Death Star droid is one of my favourites. Such a great figure. Vac metalized, you know, that silver. But if I was going to have to pick one, it might be the Power droid. He's just got so much character and his little clicky legs and everything. Really good figure, that one. And then, of course, we've got EV9D9, which is part of the last 17. And that's a great figure. And it's one I haven't got, so I can't show you. But I would love that one in my collection. But, you know, super pricey these days. Delvian6 says, always an enjoyable watch. Cheers. Thank you, Delvian. Appreciate that, mate. I heard that Galaxy's Edge will be having a bit of a revamp with a new Mandalorian theme. Do you think it will make it more appealing? Quite possibly. I think it would for a lot of the hardcore fans, the OT fans. If you said that Galaxy's Edge was completely based on the Mandalorian, then I think a lot of people would like that. When I went to Galaxy's Edge, I must admit, it didn't make me feel anything in terms of what it was connected to. I think I saw Rey once and Kylo Ren once, and maybe a couple of the First Order Stormtroopers another time, just walking around. So when you're walking around, it didn't really give me a feel of... It gave me a feel of Star Wars, but it didn't really give me a feeling of like, this is the sequel trilogy or this is the original trilogy. It just looked like something in Star Wars, which was pretty cool. Obviously, a lot of the merch and stuff is based on all eras of Star Wars. One thing I think they wouldn't be able to change is the Rise of the Resistance ride. And to be honest, I wouldn't want them to change it. It was absolutely awesome. It was really, really good fun. And of course, that's based on the First Order and Kylo Ren. And it would cost a lot of money to change that over. So they wouldn't be able to do that, I don't think. And I don't think they would bother. But maybe, yeah, if they have more Mandalorian characters walking around, Kuill and things like that, that'd be awesome. And I think everyone would love that. Qui-Gon John says, question for next week. Given that delivery is a year off, will Hasbro open up the HasLab Razor Crest for a second opportunity for people to get on board? In short answer, I don't think they will. The Idle Animator says, hi Bossk, hope you're doing well. Question for next week. Did or do you collect lightsabers? And if not, why not? I don't collect them, and I don't even have one, if I'm honest. I missed out on Luke Skywalker's green lightsaber, because if I was going to get one, it would probably be that one, or maybe one of the Sith ones or something. I think they've just been always out of my price range, because I've always been trying to get other things like vintage Star Wars and modern Star Wars. So it's never really been something I've been into. But that's not to say that I wouldn't like one, you know. I think they look great, and I can understand why people do collect them. Horror Fan says, question for you. Do you think we will get a vintage collection Luke Skywalker from The Mandalorian? First of all, Horror Fan, I just want to thank you for being a subscriber for such a long time. You know, your name has been popping up in my comments since I began almost. So thank you very much for the support over the years. But to answer your question, yeah, I do think a vintage collection Luke Skywalker is highly possible. They could use some of the parts from some of the other figures that they've already got, give him a new cloak and what have you. It would be awesome, wouldn't it, on the Mandalorian card back? There's no doubt. I think it's a license to print money. Who would not buy that? I think everybody would want that. You know, as I mentioned before in a previous question, you know, the Mandalorian is hot right now. We're going to be getting lots of figures from it. IG-11, Kuill to come this year. Awesome figures. Hopefully we'll get some others. And yeah, while I'm at it, I just want to thank Wade Customs from Instagram for his awesome custom images that I used on my thumbnail of Kuill and IG-11. Absolutely fantastic work, mate. Tyler Locke says, hey boss, great video as always. Do you think we'll get an individual release of the Rebel Fleet Trooper so we don't have to pay $50 for one? Unfortunately, Tyler, I don't think we will. You know, if it matches what they did with the previous playsets, the Jabba's Palace playset and the Carbon Freezing Chamber, we never got those figures outside of those playsets, and I don't think you will with this one. It's unfortunate because it's an army building figure. It'd be nice to be able to get that figure a few times, But, you know, it's their business model of trying to make you buy multiples of the set. It all connects together and, you know, you're supposed to buy 3 or 4 of them to complete the hallway and what have you. I'm only going to buy 2 of them for each side. But if you want some loose examples of that figure, then Tungori on tungori.com, his website, he does sell them loose for a reasonable price. So that's how I've done it. I've got 3 in the post. They were posted out just before the postal ban from the Far East, so they're on their way, and I hope to get those very soon. Todd Atwell's Conscious Pirate says, "Hey boss, question for next week. What is the rarest, most valuable Star Wars collectible that you own? Keep up the great work." So I've got a few bits and pieces which I would consider rare, but you say rare, but there's loads of them around. It's just loads of people don't really want to sell them. So in terms of most valuable, I would probably say in the vintage collection is my Canadian Yoda. I often show this one. So that's the Canadian Yoda on the Canadian card. That one is pretty rare. You know, there's not many of those around for sale anyway, because people want to keep hold of them. And then in my vintage Star Wars, I've got a nice graded R5D4, this guy on card, which I don't know, is probably worth about £500 maybe. You know, my collection isn't huge in terms of value. I've got some nice pieces, but nothing that's crazy money, you know. And before we end the video, I just want to express my thanks to all of my Patreon supporters. I'm up to 42 now, which is absolutely awesome. So thank you so much for the support. It means everything. Hopefully going to get a new microphone stand for my live streams to make those a little bit better and improve the audio and stuff like that. So it all helps the channel, all helps us grow. So thank you so much. But that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching as usual, and we shall see you on the next one.